Welcome to the iServ webinar today. We appreciate you taking time to join us. My name is AJ Whalen. I'm with iServ, and I'll be joined in a few minutes by Jerome Whelans, also from iServ Americas. Today's session is what you need to know to move your payroll to the cloud. It's a great topic, and we work with a lot of customers around the world, specifically related to cloud payroll, and it's been a hot topic lately. So we're happy to tackle it and to talk about some of the options and talk about specifically one of the options that you may not know much about. So we're excited to do this presentation for you today. As we move through the presentation today, the first thing we'll do is kind of touch through the agenda and walk through that for you. Also, we will go through kind of the overview of iServ, so you know a little bit about us. We're kind of the new kid on the block. We'll kind of touch on some of the capabilities that we bring and why you're here today to listen to us. And then I'll turn it over to Jerome Whelans, and he will walk you through the topic of meeting the cloud payroll challenge, and specifically what the options are today. Some of them are very obvious, and some of them you hear a lot about, and some of them you may not know much about, so we'll talk about that as well. And then talk about some of the things you may need to know to plan your journey towards cloud payroll, and maybe it's not what you're thinking about, and maybe you'll learn something new around that as well today. And then we'll wrap up and do questions and answers. And speaking of questions, the way we do the questions in our webinars here at iServ is we use the question function in GoToWebinar. It's that little box on the side of your screen that you may have minimized, and it's got a section in there where you can type in questions if you have them throughout the session, and we'll review them at the end. So feel free to type in at any point during the session, and we'll get to them at the end of the session. So our speaker who's going to join us in just a couple of minutes or so is Jerome Whelans. He is one of the co-founders of iServ Americas. He is on the executive management team and serves as COO of iServ Americas. He's got more than 20 years within the HRIS and payroll field, a lot of experience in global implementations and a lot of specific payroll experience, which is why we're happy to have him doing this presentation today. And he's led payroll projects across North America and also across Latin America and Asia Pacific as well, and into EMEA. So there's a lot of payroll experience there, and he is currently, right now, with iServ, serving as a global program manager for an implementation that is one of the largest SAP SuccessFactors full suite implementations in the Americas, and that includes a multi-country Employee Central Payroll implementation. So that's going to be, of course, the basis for a lot of his knowledge and anecdotes today around EC payroll. So we're happy to have Jerome Whelans, and he'll join us in just a couple of minutes or so. Real quickly, I'm going to just do some of the heavy lifting here in the housekeeping and touch on iServ Global so you know a little bit about who we are, because to some of you, we might be kind of the new kid on the block. We were founded with one thing in mind, that is Employee Central and SAP SuccessFactors. So as we say internally, that Cloud HCM is in our DNA. So it's a company that was not one of the legacy companies that learned how to do cloud after a while. We were founded by HR industry experts, and we were designed around Cloud HCM, specifically Employee Central and payroll. So our leadership understands the needs of Cloud HCM, and that is a lot of things, from integration to conversion of legacy data through kind of keeping the systems on track and support all the way through. So we're a full-service SAP SuccessFactors partner, and as we will talk about today, and the reason for this presentation today is we have a lot of strength in payroll, specifically in cloud payroll, and that's why Jerome's here to speak with us today. This next slide here, we like to talk about why we believe that Employee Central is the foundation to a great Cloud HCM landscape. And really, it's kind of self-explanatory when you look at the graphic there, but we view Employee Central as that core foundation to a good Cloud HCM system. So if you've got that right and you've got the foundation in place, you build on top of that. So your payroll integrates, your talent solutions within SuccessFactors, and then analytics on top of that. We aim at building that foundation and doing it correctly. And we do a lot of integration work. We do a lot of work with extensibility and, of course, support and managing that going forward. And it's more than just an implementation to us. It is a life cycle, and it is an ongoing one at that. So our real aim as an organization is to lead with Employee Central and to provide that foundation that allows companies to get the most value from their Cloud HCM. And of course, this slide, I think everybody has their global slide, but just in case you are new to iServ, we do have offices around the world, within North America, in Europe, in the Middle East, and in Africa. It allows us to have not just sales, but also service and support coverage globally. that's just a quick run through. I promised that I would keep that to just a couple of minutes, and I'm going to do my part there about who iXerv is. And I'm going to bring in Jerome Whelans, our speaker for today. And Jerome, one of the things that I've been reading about lately, and I think it's very timely with this topic, is the whole idea of cloud payroll seems to be very hot. I've seen a lot of threads around LinkedIn and a lot of discussion threads debating back and forth what's the right way to do this and what's the wrong way to do this and everything else. I think that we're going to kind of touch on the options today, but we're going to specifically talk about one or two that are of value that I don't think get a lot of coverage in some of those threads. So I'm happy to have you today, and I'm going to turn it over to you and let you take us through the rest of the presentation. Jerome?
Thanks, AJ. We'll try to cover some of that today. I know there's a lot of controversy going on in LinkedIn and all these posts, but let's maybe look at the options for payroll that we have today. I mean, that's basically the 4 options, right? The 4th option, I think that's where a lot of conversation going on today, is this managed payroll hosted in a private cloud. It's not something that we support, so I'm not really going to talk about it much. The other one that we do have, and of course that I am right now leading for a large automotive customer, is a cloud implementation, or as they call it, Employee Central Payroll these days. And then the next one that we also want to touch on today is basically the outsource piece, right? How do we outsource to a global provider? Why would we do that, etc. And I'm going to talk mostly about these first 2 boxes. Then the last one, of course, it's the long-lasting on-premise SAP HR payroll that a lot of customers still sit on and kind of thinking about what is my strategy or where am I going next. Once again, not something that is a topic for today. I'm going to speak mainly about the first 2 topics here, okay, box 1 and 2. Okay. Now, what is SuccessFactors ECP or Employee Central Payroll? I think a lot of people get confused over time what it now really is for and what it does. So I want to lay out a couple of simple things here. What is it really trying to aim for? The first thing, of course, it's targeted for larger customer countries. It's mainly for populations that are larger than 1,000 employees. Okay, and sometimes even 1,000 is on the small side. It is only available for 38 countries. I'm actually in the process of building 2 new countries with SAP, but right now it supports 38 countries. The infrastructure and the hosting service are by SAP. It's an SAP paper, it's an SAP data center. Everything is hosted by SAP. It falls under the SuccessFactors contract. So all in all, it's kind of the same thing, same contract, same SLAs, etc. The one thing that is, of course, very typical about ECP, you customer manage it. So SAP hosts it. You manage the payroll. Now there is some optional service out there, like you can do some tax filing, etc. But in general, you manage the payroll end to end. It is fully automated, as it says here next, especially when you start using the new functionality of Payroll Control Center. But you have to do all the steps yourself. Okay. And then the last one, it's full transparency over the complete end-to-end process. So it involves, with the new Payroll Control Center, you can actually go through it. You have auditability, you have validation up front, there's validation after the fact, but it's all baked in this whole ECP piece. In essence, ECP though is still the on-premise payroll hosted by SAP. I think that should be very clear. Okay, so if you think about this whole offering here, just shortly, if you think it's only 38 countries, and most companies are probably in more than 38 countries, or maybe don't have different countries. And most companies probably don't have just more than 1,000 employees in the country. That there's other needs that companies will have, and that's the next piece we will touch on with when we go to option 2. Okay, but let's maybe look a little bit at the EC Payroll Control Center. So, what has definitely changed from the on-premise perspective now the ECP one is that ECP is a lot more focused towards the end user experience. Went through this now. This is my 12th month of implementation of ECP. I am used to the old gray screens, the transactions, and everything else, but right now where we're at is we actually have a graphical interface. The graphical interface is quite different than what SAP looked like before. There's good insights. There's a lot of clear steps now, what you need to do and what needs to happen. As you can see in the screen here, you can see the current processes that I'm running. There's upcoming processes that I can see, and I can even see my completed processes that I've fully completed. And This continues to basically evolve over payroll processes throughout the year, but it's quite a nice dashboard. It gives me good insight, and also it gives me kind of the status. The colors up front kind of represent where I'm at in my process, if I have errors or if I'm without errors, etc. And go to the next slide. If you then drill down and truly these processes, then you start seeing the more detailed screens. I mean, I have 2 screenshots on here. But you can see it looks very different than the old gray screen where you had to go with a wage step reporter or go into the clusters and find information. Today it's actually represented right on the screen, which I really like. So you can see the gross amounts, you can see the employee statistics, for example, you can see the retros you've run and the impact of those retros. Those are things that you really had to look for in the old situation. And that really is thing that what Payroll Control Center has added on top of the on-premise and really adds to the ECP flavor of this and the web-based flavor of this. A very solid and a very good payroll. Okay. Now option two, now I was just talking about the fact, okay, it's great, 38 countries, more than 1,000 employees, but that's great, but that might not be exactly my landscape. And I think that's where a lot of customers struggle today. What am I going to do when I have a country that's not part of the 38 countries? Or what am I going to do if my countries are, a couple of countries are quite large and larger than 1,000, but the rest is all in the teens and 20s? I mean, what am I going to do with these people? So that's where iXerv and Celergo Payroll Connector really have an option, and I think a great option. First of all, it's available for 140 countries. I think Celergo did an excellent offering. If you look at their total map globally, I think there's maybe some sub-Saharan countries that we're missing, but I think basically any other country in the world is serviced, which is an absolute fantastic offer. The next thing that we also then see is that the implementation and the payroll aggregation is basically done by Celergo. Okay, so there's no, hey, I go out and I have to figure out by country who I'm going to pick as a vendor, how am I going to staff this, who am I going to work with. I'm coming with a different implementation methodology by country. My data models are different by country. I have to start thinking about an interface that I have to do by country. That's not there. We basically, the implementation and payroll aggregation is done by Celergo. We provide the integration with one global interface. We define the interface with you. We'll set it up, we'll run it, and we continue to run it for you. Okay, so we make sure this payroll or this interface will always be compliant with what Celergo needs. The next thing, of course, is that the payroll is fully managed by Celergo. A little bit different than ECP is, because you have a lot of these smaller payroll countries, it's more cost effective to basically have somebody manage that payroll for you. And that's what Celergo does. They really bring to the table, they run this payroll end to end. Now, as an ex-ADP guy, I'm just throwing that in here, I've seen their offering too, but their offering is very, very stringent, right? There's validations, there's steps that customers have to do, there's steps that the payroll provider will do. Celergo doesn't work that way. They really work with their clients, and that's something I really like about their offering. So additionally, they do have some optional services in some countries. Of course, there's always countries that need something managed about money movement, translation, whatever it is. They basically have a list of that, and you can look at that when you actually look at an implementation overall. It is a fully automated end-to-end payroll process. So we provide the data goes in, and then the steps happen in the process of the payroll. But here the difference is Celergo will actually do the execution of it. You don't do it yourself. The last one, they of course, same as ECP, have full transparency of the complete end-to-end process. Who's touching what is being done, where is my money going in the end. Okay. Now, what does this offering look like? I mean, most people have maybe seen a screenshot or two. I just want to walk through that a little bit to give you an idea. The same as with the ECP, as you just saw the dashboard on PCC, we build a similar global payroll dashboard. So if you don't run ECP, but you run a different country, this is the dashboard you will see. You will see within SuccessFactors there will be a portlet that will basically show you the global payroll dashboard. Now, in this case, there's 4 different payrolls on here, but there might be a lot more on there. If you have 20 countries, there will be 20 on there, etc. You will see the employee count you have. You can see, the 5 steps of basically the pay process that Celergo follows. Pay changes sent, payroll approved, client funding sent, pay date, and pay slips delivered. There's process indicators on here, so you can see the color of where the process is. So as you see right now, that United Kingdom local monthly one has an issue because there's a red status is there. So we can click on that, and the next slide we can show what then the next drill down would look like. So maybe AJ can go to the next slide. And then you will see you can actually the payroll calendar of the individual payroll, okay? And you may have multiple payrolls in a country, but this is, for example, the United Kingdom local monthly. I see the calendar from me, very visual, okay, what is going on. I see the dates on there represented by colors. So I see my pay change is sent 07, I see a blue dot underneath, and I see that the status is green. The payroll approved on the 14th. I see that, hey, it's also done. It's green. Where do I have an issue? Client funding sent. It's the 20th of July. There's the actual date with the blue box around it. But I see that today, there's an issue. I need to do something. And that's basically then you work through this with Celergo and ensuring that the steps get done. And then you see that the rest of the dates fall on the 25th here in this case. Okay. So this is kind of the global payroll dashboard that comes with that. What is then the next piece? The next piece, of course, is what you also like to see. First, you want to send payroll to the payroll data, but you also like to see the pay slips. So rather than having to struggle with every country, what's the payslip format? Is it Adobe or is it a different format? Can I get it back in SuccessFactors, or do I have to make some ESS available by payroll vendor and figure out single sign-on structures, etc.? We don't have that. We have basically a portlet and EC. You get the payslip on there, and that's simply we see two flavors here. You can actually even choose between private mode, where I can see hey, I got paid this net, and here's my pay slip, and I can choose to not show that and just print my pay slips. But in the end, the employee is in control, and the employee is in control through SuccessFactors. They do not have to go to the individual payroll providers or payroll countries. Go to the next one. Right. And here then, as you actually see then Adobe pay slip, so they've all been in Adobe format, but here, for example, is the China one. Maybe every country, of course, looks a little bit different, but this is in general what we will see. Employees are in charge of their own pay slips, just like ECP. Kind of feels the same, it works the same, so there's not a lot of difference. Even if people moving around from country to country and maybe go on different payrolls, the whole functionality kind of remains the same for them, which is really nice. Okay. Now, one of the things that people struggle with is now, how do I really plan this global payroll rollout? And there's a couple of things that you need to do. Now, I took an example here of a client we recently talked to, and you see they have 19 countries. And two countries are quite large, the US and Germany. The US, great candidate for ECP, 5,302 employees. Germany, same way. But then you see after that, the employee numbers drop off quite sharply, all the way down to 7. Not really a return on investment if you want to implement ECP. So first of all, step one, as I say here, determine the right platform. So we see ECP will be great for the first 2 countries, but then you see anything below 1,000. What am I going to do with that? Probably give it to Celergo. It's the right process. I have to basically only pick one provider for all these countries. The next step is then determining the sequence. Now, the sequence is a little bit more difficult. It depends, of course, on a couple of dependencies that we can have. First of all, payroll go live dates, always a big struggle. Every country has different needs or has different ways that they have to go live. Ideally, you go live at the beginning of the year, but that's for smaller payrolls always not so much of an issue. But you still have only certain dates during the year you can go live. The next thing that might be an issue is contract end dates of the current provider. If I have 9 months left in my contract and I have to pay it, of course, I don't want to put that country first. So I want to think about, hey, what's a good sequence here? The other piece that I can look at is the EC country availability. Sometimes is an issue. EC definitely supports a whole bunch more countries than ECP, but there's still some outliers that are not supported. So maybe I should put those more to the back so I can actually ensure that that country, some of the country data is available before I go there. Another dependency to think about is really the inbound payroll feeds or the systems dependent on payroll and what I need to do there. And the last one is basically your resource availability globally. Now, next step is basically, this very simply is, what does then a rollout plan look like for this? Now, if I was in my first situation where it's like, okay, I don't really want a payroll aggregator, I just want to go with what I have today, you get into this long timeline most of the time. Of course, it can look a little bit different. There can be multiple streams, but what you end up with is kind of like this. You do a global design session for EC, fantastic, we got momentum. Then we decide we're going to do a pilot for one of the major countries, as you just saw. US was a big one here. EC payroll implementation for US may take up to 9 months. So, okay, now I'm a year further after my global design, I'm EC payroll. Now I have to put Germany on. Germany going to take a lot of my team again, global team, to get that right, ensuring that's in line with the US what we've implemented. So it takes me another 6 months. Now I'm a year and a half in, and now I have to start thinking about my local payroll interfaces for every other country that I have. So I have to deploy another 17 countries and think about their payroll interface, have to run individual parallels for these countries, have to determine where my pay slips go, I have to set up my infrastructure with these providers. a lot of work. So resourcing becomes a problem. You see that the length of the overall implementation becomes quite long, and where does my return on investment go? Now, if you go to the next timeline, that's where more we do with a Celergo implementation. So we really start with an EC Global Design. As part of that EC Global Design, we right away start thinking about also our global payroll interface, the iXerv Celergo connector, and we do a little bit of prep work there as part of the EC Global Design, the first 3 months. And after that's done, we can basically freely, based upon these dependencies that we talked about earlier, roll out whatever country we want. Okay, so we can stagger, we don't have to worry about, oh, is this payroll vendor, can he make this available? Do I have to do ESS? Do I have to write a certain interface? What do we need to test? I need to get a format from them. That's all gone. We don't have that. That interface is done. Now I can stagger and do whatever I want. So as you can see, we can condense the implementation timeline quite a lot, which is great. EC Global Design 3 months, EC Payroll for US 9 months, Germany Payroll 6 months, and then the rest of the time I also deploy 17 countries at the same time. And in about a 2 year or 2.5 year time frame, I can have my full scope done, which is great because that my whole organization is on, I can see everybody, and I have my integration with payroll done. So as you can see at the bottom here, very simply, it's a much faster and less expensive implementation overall. Okay. That's shortly, I wanted to walk through it a little bit. So what makes then our iXerv Celergo connector really so unique? I mean, we just talked about it, right? It really offers SAP-certified integration. I don't know, there's some news yesterday. We finally got it approved also for the App Center, and we've been HCI certified since August. So SAP has seen our integration, they've tested it, and they've approved it. So this gives you confidence that what we do and what we give to you in the end is actually something that works, which is with a local payroll provider, you have to figure it out on your own. Provides global coverage. As you saw, Celergo basically has 140 countries, or even a little bit more. That there's not a lot of payroll vendors that do this, and that's fantastic. So we can basically cover almost everybody. As I said before, maybe if you have some sub-Saharan African countries, that might be the only piece, but anywhere else in the world, we basically cover it. I really can facilitate new EC customers. New EC customers have never done payroll and want to think about that. But also the other way around. If you are already a Celergo customer, we can actually build this for you and help you implement EC. So it works 2 ways. It really helps you automate your payroll data process, right? I don't have to start thinking every month where I get this data from and do I put it in and what format does it need to go to what provider and what vendor and what SFTP server do I have to look at to get the file to. No, it's all the same, and we basically can automate it. The next thing that we have, it really simplifies global payroll integration. You can run ECP and iXerv Celergo next to each other. They kind of look alike. They have the same functionality. They work the same way. They both work with the Adobe forms. They work with the payslips in the same place. So it really is a nice comprehensive package that can work side by side. The last thing, of course, is intuitive and easy to use, as you saw. The screens are pretty similar to the Payroll Control Center. It's kind of the same way, a dashboard, some of the process, and the payslip. So I think overall it looks and feels the same for the customer in the end. So AJ, maybe I'll hand it back here to you.
Sure, thanks, Jerome. And one of the things that we think is really important when you're kind of evaluating where you are in this process, everyone we talk to is at a different stage. You've got some folks who are completely on-premise who are looking at evaluating Employee Central and Employee Central Payroll. Some have already purchased licenses. They're in the planning stages now, but they're not sure which end is up and how the integrations work and how the conversion from the legacy is going to work. And we have some customers who are just newly live, and they've got some concerns around health checks and validating the integrity of their configuration and the processes. And then we've got those customers who have been live on EC for a little while, and they've got a need to make sure that they stay current with everything, and that's where our Cloud Care function comes in. So the purpose of this is what we're offering for all of the customers and prospects out there is there's a place for you on the timeline. We have services that represent where you are in your cloud journey, and we request that you contact us, schedule a free SAP SuccessFactors assessment. And again, depending on where you are, you might be just thinking of it, or you might be live. We have services that will help you optimize that and increase the return on your SAP SuccessFactors investment. Part of this process is, of course, doing the cloud payroll assessment to see where you fit and how this fits in with the Celergo offering that Jerome just talked about. So please do contact us, info@iXerv.com. I'm going to check the question queue right now. And we've got a reminder, in case you joined us late, we do take questions by the question box on the side of your GoToWebinar control panel, and you can type them in there. And it looks like we've got some questions in there. So I'm going to go to the first one. Jerome, how long on average does a Celergo implementation take?
Depends, of course, a little bit on the complexity, but I'm assuming it's somewhere between 2 to 4 months.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Darren.
Hey, Darren. Introduce you. Darren Lowe from Celergo is with us, and I apologize I didn't introduce you in the beginning. Welcome, Darren.
Oh, no worries. So you can. That's a very good assessment, Jerome. We can do usually it's about 60 to 90 days for an implementation.
Yeah.
Perfect. Next question, actually from the same individual. Can Celergo handle more than 1,000 employees? And I know that question came because, Jerome, you mentioned 1,000 as being kind of a dividing line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Darren,
yes. Yeah. So yes, we can. Usually, it'll depend a little bit by country. So in some countries, Philippines, India, Mexico, we certainly can. If you're more into sub-Saharan Africa, we would definitely want to talk about that.
Okay. Well, Darren, it's very fortuitous that you were just hanging on the line there. So I would get to the next question in the queue. Also, this may go to Darren as well. Is Celergo data physically in Employee Central? One of you may answer that.
I could probably answer that one. So no, it's basically through web services and single sign-on. So the data is securely still with the payroll vendor. We just display the data.
Okay. That's the bottom of my question queue. And of course, if you are attending and you have questions afterwards, Jerome's email is on the screen right now, and you can always direct questions to him, or you can contact us at info@iXerv.com. Darren, we can bring you in to obviously get answers to any questions that may come up as well. I do want to thank our speakers for today, Jerome Whelans from iXerv and Darren Lowe from Celergo for joining us, and we hope this provided some insights into some of the options that you have when it comes to cloud payroll. And again, it's been kind of a hot topic lately if you follow some of the discussion threads on LinkedIn, and this is definitely one of the things that should be part of that discussion as well, because it's a very viable option for a lot of companies out there. So we appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to join us. And in case you haven't seen it, in the bottom of your GoToWebinar control panel, you can download the presentation. If you want a copy of it there, the PDF is available for download. Again, thanks to our speakers. Thank you to all of you for joining us for this session today. We hope you'll join us for another iXerv webinar in the near future. And this will end our session for today.